It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon. Happy to provide a few opening remarks on Weather Service and the mission overall and how we're evolving that, and then how NOAA's GOESR satellite is going to impact that, how it's going to be such a game changer. So let me get started, and I'll just note from all the activities this morning, I'm really glad I don't have to spell my name so you can look at the slides. All right, so first, the title slide was how we're evolving our service. Let me talk a little bit about the why. I'll start with the why on that. We are seeing an increasing vulnerability to storms, to weather, climate. We keep statistics about all the different storms, how much rainfall we're getting, and what is the damage. And we're seeing that the number of billion-dollar events where that damage is occurring is continuing to grow. And we're investing, we have more people moving to the coast. All those things are causing people to be needing, demanding more weather information. And specifically, they're looking for weather information they can use to make decisions, make choices. It's really about the impact, that last mile. I'll talk a little bit about that in the future, but I'll give one example, and that's about talking about storm surge from hurricanes. We used to provide that information in mean, low, or low water. So unless you're a mariner like myself, so former ship captain, I actually know what that means with respect to tides. But now we issue those forecasts above ground level, which is more layman's terms so people can use it. So that's really what we're talking about, providing information so folks can use it to make decisions. And then finally, the mission. So our mission to provide weather, water, and climate data, forecasts, and warnings. I'm going to separate it out into 2 points because really that's about a production capability, okay, to provide those forecasts and watches and warnings. The second part is the impact for the protection of life and property and the enhancement of the national economy. So we're talking about the service part, that last mile, and we actually need a lot of help with that, our partners, our ambassadors, and really that's what we're trying to do to evolve our service. Talking more about the service part. How can you use our information to really protect lives and property versus just the production capability that we throw over the fence, so to speak. Okay? So what's the genesis of that? I'm sure many of you in this room and online are aware of the very severe tornado outbreak in 2011, Joplin, Missouri as well. It actually goes back, if you look at a very similar event back in 1974, there were roughly 300 fatalities. And then in 2011, a very similar amount. And so we have all these new technologies, better capabilities, and really highlighted our need to focus on that last mile, that service component. So there's a couple of congressional studies that were directed us, improving our service, providing forecasts for the future. We contracted with McKinsey & Company to actually do an analysis with our partners, also internally, to say, well, are we structured to do this? What are the things we need to do? And we've been assimilating that data over the last year and a half to figure out what are the things we need to do to make that move to evolve our service. So what will that evolution look like? So if you look at these pictures, it's really about engaging our local partners to basically see what do people need. How are they interpreting our forecasts, warnings, and watches to make decisions, to inform the public, to make all those decisions that are necessary to protect lives and property, for us to realize that second half of our mission statement. So here's the ways forward that we're working based on all of that information we gathered, internal, external engagement, a lot of internal teams saying what are some ideas, how do we move forward? And so let me cover a few of those that we're trying to evolve our service. So the local engagement is probably the most key part, and what we call that is impact-based decision support services. Basically taking our forecast, watches, and warnings and taking them to the next level of, well, how are you interpreting that? Are we conveying it in the right way so you can make the decisions? When do you need to make the decisions? What kind of accuracy do you need? What kind of lead time? All of that. And basically, it really emphasizes that local partnership. So I'll just emphasize that local partnership at each of our offices, that is so important. Right now, we already do this to a large extent. Forest fires, or we actually embed incident meteorologists. When we have a local event, we embed, we send out meteorologists to be part of the emergency management, command centers. So it's really taking that the next step. So we also need to be able to work together amongst the various offices. So adjacent offices are very consistent. So working on a collaborative process from the national to the local level and across boundaries, so that you don't see a forecast that has, discontinuities at a state line, for example. It's really about where the weather is. So working that collaborative nature of our forecast process. The other is looking at the workload across all of our offices. We have different workloads in different locations, depending on the events and the seasons, and figuring out how to balance that. Right now, our offices were basically set up around our NextRad radars and with exactly the same makeup of every single office, no matter where you are and what the workload is. And so really looking at that to see what is the best way to go forward. So we want to work on our workforce. The people are the most important part of our mission. What do we need to do to improve on their capabilities, not just to add on to that meteorology, hydrology, climate background, but how do we work with people to understand their needs and how we need to convey the information to really get it across, finish that last mile. And then finally, we've got to support that critical science, research, technology, innovation. So technology, NOAA's GOESR is a big part of that. So seeing those new technologies come to fruition that we can utilize to really, improve our mission. So this bow tie diagram on its side, if you can visualize that, is really what we're trying to represent for this. The bottom half of this bow tie is really about what we do. That's that production capability, that first half of the mission statement that I was talking about. And the very bottom rung is observations. So we're talking about our satellites, our radars, et cetera. So NOAA's GOESR fits right in that. And then working all the way up to issuing those watches and warnings. And then the top half is really about realizing that weather-ready nation mission. And what are our partners doing, to get out the message? And how do we work with our deep relationships, emergency managers, the public, with all of you to get this out? And then in between is that impact-based decision support services, right at the center of that. So this is how we're trying to visualize how we're trying to move from that first half of our mission statement, that production capability, to the service side, and how we make that as effective as we possibly can. So if you go back to that 2011 event where we had over 300 fatalities, when that occurs in the future, the outcome we want to see is much less fatalities from that because of our efforts to evolve and to go to this paradigm. So at the bottom of that bow tie, I emphasized observations and infrastructure, and that's where I fit in as the director of the Office of Observations for Weather Service. So as part of our evolution, a year and a half ago, we redid our organization, reorganized it according to the forecast process, with observations being one portfolio. So we reorganized our organization, our budget, even our governance structure. And so that gives me purview over everything we do and how it all fits together and integrates. And one of the core backbone parts of that is our geostationary constellation, where we provide situational awareness to all of our forecasts. We watch every single weather pattern as it comes across the United States using these satellites. And you can see we've been doing that for 40 years. We have two, one at east, one at west, as well as a backup. And we've got GOESR about to be launched, and then you can see where it's going to be in its checkout position. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about that because Greg Mant will talk about that after me. But you can kind of see how much of the globe it covers and how much we rely on it to maintain situational awareness. So NOAA's GOESR satellite's going to be supporting a weather-ready nation next. And so we're really looking forward to it. I mean, I'll just repeat this for everybody in the room, but it's going to be a game changer. We're looking at a capability of going from black and white to high definition TV, for that baseline imager. We're really looking forward to the lightning mapper and what it's going to bring for capabilities to basically highlight areas where severe weather is going to be growing. And then we have space weather instruments that are going to be monitoring the sun for those bursts of energy. We're going to be monitoring the space environment as well so that we can provide updates to the industries, aviation in particular, about radio communication blackouts, impacts on GPS navigation. So all of these things is really going to change the world in which we live as far as forecasting. But the bottom line is it's going to support a weather-ready nation. It's going to enhance our ability to meet our mission, in particularly that second half, taking it the full way. And so we're really looking forward to that. So I'm excited to be here for this launch. And with that, I will open it up for questions. Everybody still eating lunch? Anything online? Oh.
Right.
As soon as the light's on, you're on.
Yes, out of the WBSC software. I know there's not been a decision yet on where to locate Joe. And you may not be the right person to ask. But I'm just wondering, with the lighting capability, would it not make more sense to have this at least able to see the severe weather parts of the country at least fairly well, no matter where you're going?
So thanks for the question, Dan. You bring up actually an excellent point, and something that'll be part of the consideration for where it goes. So the first thing we're going to do is once it's on orbit, we're going to take 6 months to make sure it gets checked out, validated, everything's working, and then we're going to be making a decision on which way it would go, east-west. And part of the consideration is the health of the constellation at that time, but also those kind of factors of where do we need it most.
Is there any possibility that a decision could be made to go not to an east-west, but to a middle position? Has that been looked at and ruled out, or is it still a possibility?
I don't believe that that's been looked at, Dan. We are anticipating an extended checkout and operating it in its checkout location for up to a year. So we're going to be doing that and then seeing where it is, and then we'll be making a very tough decision on which way to go.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Microphone?
there we go. So is it a possibility that the 13 gets retired and then 14 goes into 13? Or does that work like that? Or is it only going to be either east or west?
So I'm not going to speculate on this time. We're going to get it up. We're going to check it out. We're going to be using it, making sure everything is operational, and the Weather Service is going to be able to use it, once that checkout is done. But there's still some deliberations that need to be made before we decide on which way it goes to east-west.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Anything online? Oh, sir?
Oh, there we go. Mike Mogul, How the Weather Works, Naples, Florida. I'm ex-Weather Service. I used to work in the preparedness and forecast and warning program, so I've got some background in all of this. We haven't had a lot of 300 fatality disasters since 1974. But what if we put out a perfect forecast with all of the latest technologies and 300 people die? What's the Weather Service's response when Congress asks?
So I think our response, that's exactly why we're evolving how we do business, because we're trying to get to that last piece. Even with a perfect forecast, there is no, how would I say it the best? Actually, Dr. Uccellini, there's a quote he has, and I'm not sure, I don't remember the forecaster from the early 90s, but the quote was that a forecast or an observation has no intrinsic value. That is only the value that it has is based on what the action is that people take on it to protect them and their property and enhance the economy. So really, what we're trying to do in evolving what we do is ensure that last mile so that when we issue that perfect forecast, that it travels to the point where people make that perfect decision in order to protect themselves, get out of harm's way, evacuate, whatever is necessary, that piece, and that's what we're focused on. So we're doing it so that we can try and avoid those events in the future.
Kind of piggybacking on Mike's question, Erica Groh, WNBC. This is obviously tied to the Weather Ready Nation initiative. It's fairly new. I've heard a lot of talk about it, but even though my station is an ambassador, and even though I'm on the board on enterprise communication for the AMS, I still am not really sure what the goal is. And I also feel like, and again, this is not what we're talking about directly today, but in that spirit of having a weather-ready nation, are there enough resources being devoted to that part of the puzzle? Getting people to recognize who is a good source for weather information and who, what does it even mean to be a WRN ambassador?
So thank you for that question. That's actually some feedback that I really want to take back and try and feed into our Weather Ready Nation Ambassador program about how do we really, maximize that contribution of our partners. And I think it's going to be a key thing. And I think we need to continue to communicate that and see how we can maximize that benefit. And you're right, we're not all the way there, and it's about evolving to build that Weather Ready Nation.
Jen Carfagno from the Weather Channel. My question is about the Global Lightning Mapper and how the data will be used practically. The Global Lightning Mapper and how the data will be used on a practical basis.
Okay. So this is going to be the first time that we're going to have a Global Lightning Mapper on orbit from geostationary. We're really looking forward to that. The idea is for it to get down into the forecast offices where they can view it on the AWIP system, so as maintaining their situational awareness. This is not the only thing they're using, so they're still going to be using their Doppler radars, spotter reports, etc. But the idea is that the lightning, basically information would give them ideas on where to focus their efforts, where to focus the radar and what they're looking, and where to forecast, make severe watches, warnings, etc. So that's kind of where we are. I think there's still some question as to how would we use that in our modeling efforts? How would we add that in? And I think there's a lot of work to be done for that.
Just as a follow-up, is there any chance it would ever get to the point where we were making lightning warnings, not just severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings or flash flood warnings, but lightning warnings?
Interesting question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but that's something I could get back to you. But I will offer a personal IDSS experience with lightning. So on vacation with my family in Seabrook in South Carolina. I'm out golfing. My family is at the pool. There's lightning within 6 miles. And it triggered the alarm for the golf course and the pool to be evacuated until there's no lightning for 20 minutes. So in that way, they're really setting off an alarm for lightning to basically say you shouldn't be outside in the open, you shouldn't be in the pool, and basically they're using just pure lightning data for their decision support. Other questions?
Just a quick comment, Mike Mogul again, Naples, Florida. We have a lot of golfers in Naples. When the sirens go off on the golf course, the golfers play through. When the rain starts, they hide under a tree. When it rains really hard, they get in their golf carts and drive back to the clubhouse. I guess I'll put a sign up in front of my condo.
It reminds me of the quote, I think it might have been Arnold Palmer, you know, when there's lightning, raise a 2-iron because even God can't hit a 2-iron. So you're absolutely right. We have to inform people. We have to, you know, still have to trust them to make decisions for what's in their best interest.
Irene Sands from WFTV. Just one fun fact question, because we do a lot of school talks, and I know kids are into it. In the slide that you had before,
Okay.
what do you do once a satellite gets retired? Does it just get kicked out of orbit, or it just floats around?
What they do is, I probably should let Greg offer this, but I believe they just elevate it. So they get it into farther out into orbit so that it's out of the way.
Got it. Thank you.
I got that one right, even though I'm not a satellite expert.
Great job.
All right.
Thank you very
Okay,
much. Appreciate it.
thank you.